Welcome back, everybody, to the Taking a Breath podcast. Today, I've got a good friend of mine, Jacob Miles, joining me on the interview. He's a rising junior at NC State, majoring in civil engineering with a minor in leadership. At NC State, he's an RA. He's a club gymnastics team member, a National Residence Hall honorary VP, and works with the Chancellor's office. In addition to that, he is a safety coordinator and coaches and judges gymnastics as a way to give back to the community. And more importantly, he's a really great guy, a great person, and a great friend, and I've learned a lot from him. I'm really excited to have him on today to talk a little bit about his coaching experience, about his leadership experience, and just in general. He's got a really good energy and a really good positivity about him, and so I'm so excited to have him on. Jacob, welcome to Taking a Breath, and I would love for you to tell us just a little bit more about you.
Well, hey, Parker. Thank you for the warm introduction. I appreciate it. So as Parker said, I am a current rising junior at NC State University. At NC State, I'm involved in a few different departments, but one of my biggest commitments started actually in the Impact Leadership Village with Parker, and that's how we met originally. From the Impact Leadership Village, I moved on to be a resident advisor the next year. Fortunately enough, when I became a resident advisor, I was actually a resident advisor for the village. So again, Park and I have lived together for 2 years. So at NC State, that's my biggest commitment on top of classes. As Park said, I travel with the gymnastics team. I also compete, but I also judge the competitions as well. So it's a little bit of a juggle there. Outside of NC State, though, I do continue to coach gymnastics. I know that's one thing, Park, you said want to speak about today. And over the summers, usually I lifeguard. This year I've taken up a new position. And in this position, I really help to support and help out different lifeguard teams and management staffs wherever I can and wherever I'm needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I definitely want to talk a little bit about that gymnastics stuff. And I know that a lot of what's associated with that in my mind is like, and especially with you, because I know you as an athlete, I know you as you know, your character, and a lot of what I see is just like a really strong work ethic. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, like what really drives your work ethic, and just kind of what has your experience in gymnastics taught you about hard work and that reward?
Sure, absolutely. So my parents actually put me in gymnastics when I was 2 or 3 years old. So it's something, I've been in my entire life. And I think some of the most important lessons I've learned in life are simply just through gymnastics and from my coaches. One thing that's really pushed my personal work ethic is realizing that not everything's going to happen on the first try. Sometimes it takes just multiple attempts just to achieve something once. It's just an important lesson that gymnastics taught me. It's the fact that, hey, I'm going to land on my butt 29 times before I might land on my feet that 30th time.
Wow.
So one thing I realized is, hey, like you just have to keep trying and you just have to keep pushing yourself to go one more. If you go one more, each time you'll learn something different. I did 29 ways and I didn't do it the right way 29 times, but each way you try to adjust something small until eventually you get it and you can land your feet, stick that landing, or catch the bar, whatever it might be.
That's right.
And not only does that, kind of that perspective of, hey, I have to try one more, help kind of push my work ethic, but it's also just my mentors and my peers and my teammates. Fortunately with gymnastics, I had the same teammates from when I was 7 years old all the way until I was 18.
Wow.
I had for the most part, the same core group of people. And so not only did we learn how to work with each other, but to a degree, we kind of lifted with each other. We were practicing about 20 hours a week together. So we learned how to push each other and how to really support each other and know when, hey, let's push each other a little bit more. And hey, you know what, like, let's let up a little bit. It's too much.
And I think that's such a strong point because people nowadays especially are so quick to give up. And so I love that you said that, like trying one more time, like continuing to push through it even when it gets hard, because I think so many people that I see, whether it's in school, whether it's in work, I mean, all the time you see these people who are so quick to give up. They try something and there's this mentality of like, I should be able to try it once and instantly, I'm good at it, or, and I think a lot of times people are so quick to give up now because of that. And that's what I love about that work ethic side of it, is it's not about just one time. It's not about one repetition of something and you're going to be perfect. it's like, oh my gosh, like you really have to put in the work day after day.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point you're going to get that reward. So talk a little bit about that reward side of it. Like, when is that payoff for you?
Absolutely. So in terms of gymnastics, eventually when you start to understand a certain skill or a certain move, at that point, like you said, it feels nice. It's kind of that reward of, hey, like I finally did this. But that's one of the biggest times that you get to learn from that point. You figured out eventually how you got there, and now you have to figure out how to continue developing that and perfect it even more. So I think, and that's one thing that can apply to gymnastics, but it can also be applied to multiple different aspects of my life as well, is, hey, I figured out how to do this one thing. Now, how can I continue to perfect it and make it better?
Absolutely.
You might try something, again, 29 times, and then it fails 29 times, but you get it on the 30th, but it still might be perfect on the 30th time. And so by the time you get it, you also have to just make sure you keep pushing yourself to even strive to be better. So once you get it, kind of what you're saying, you just want to keep trying.
Yeah, man. What I tell people is, like, fall in love with that process. You know what I mean?
It is a process.
Because really, at the end of the day, if you're just driven by your success, by that little moment of just success, then your moments of confidence that build, you're going to be disappointed for so long until that one point, and it's going to be short, it's going to be momentary. And then you're going to go right back into it. Like you're saying, like, you have that success and then you go back and you're learning from it and you're learning more, because really at the end of the day, the key thing is the process of the build. You really want to fall in love with that process. And so I love that idea of, like, success. You're always going to keep learning. There's never a point where you're like, I can't learn anymore. And I think that, like, with gymnastics, dude, like, you guys, there's always someone better. There's always people that are up there, and you're really learning from. And so let's talk a little bit more about, like, your teammates, because you mentioned it a little bit. And so how have you found, like, what have you learned about interacting with people from your teammates specifically? Like, how has that teamwork really been influential in your, like, everyday life?
Gotcha. Absolutely. So I think one of the best things about gymnastics is, so men's gymnastics has 6 different events. With those 6 different events, you're not going to be the best at every event. You're going to have your strengths and you're going to have your weaknesses. And one of the best things is that your teammates are going to have different strengths and different weaknesses. And so not only are you working out together, but you can also teach each other as well. Like, I might be just having a bad day and I cannot, do one event. I cannot tumble to save my life. But if my teammate over here can do the tumbling and can do the skills, he can pull me aside and be like, hey, also, like, try it this way. And so it's a constant mentorship between the team. But in addition to that, and I think one thing that I learned from gymnastics that I apply to my everyday life is, on our team, like I said before, we have different strengths and weaknesses. And outside of the gym, everybody that you come in contact with has their different strengths and weaknesses. And it's important to recognize other people's strengths. And because if you have, for example, 20 people in a room, that is 20 different talents, strengths, and ideas that can and should be utilized, just as if you were a team. And if you leave one person out of the team, or if you leave one person out of your leadership group, then you're doing yourself and your team a disservice. Because that one person might have that one idea, that one kind of different mindset or different perspective that you don't have, that could just make everything click. So in terms of a gymnastics perspective, that one different perspective that your teammate has might be what makes that skill click for you.
That's right.
From a leadership perspective, if somebody around you has that different opinion or different idea that you don't have, that might be the one thing that you've been looking for and that you need, and that can make the group succeed as a whole, just as if you were a team in gymnastics.
Absolutely.
So that is one of the best things that I found from my teammates, is not only do we push each other, but we also taught each other so much about how to use everyone's different ideas and opinions and perspectives to work together as a team and to accomplish goals as a whole, not just on an individual side.
That's so strong, dude. And I'm always telling people, like, people have such a tendency to focus on their weaknesses. Like, personally, you're always seeing the worst of yourself. You always notice your flaws, and it's important to surround yourself with people who are going to see your strengths and promote your strengths. Like, at the end of the day, it goes back to who you're surrounding yourself with, and with your team. That's the key, is like, if you're using those people to really bring out your strengths, and each individual person, you guys are all pulling from each other, that's how you're going to build such a strong team that you guys have, right?
Exactly. And that's and going off that, that's one thing that is great about being a resident advisor at State. It's just,
Yeah.
with so many different diverse people living in one community, we can use everybody's different backgrounds, ideas, and opinions to work together as a team. And you know that more than anybody as the Impact Leadership President.
Right.
You got to work with such a great, diverse team, forming leadership development every single day, not only for yourself and your executive team, but also just for the ILV members as well.
Yeah. And it's all about, like, I love that, not in terms of only strengths and weaknesses, but also ideas. Yeah. Like, when you're working on a team, if it's not, even necessarily, gymnastics, it's what people are bringing to the table. It's their talents, It's their ideas. I mean, it really applies to anything. And I always tell people who are trying to start different things, or, because I do, like, love to work with, young entrepreneur type people. And I always tell people, really, at the end of the day, you need to surround yourself with people who are going to be supportive of you. You need to have that base of people who they can come up and they can be the strength where you don't have different strengths. Whether it's, like, a lot of times it's a creative person who doesn't necessarily have the administrative side of things. I see that a good amount, where it's like, okay, like, I'm really creative, I'm coming up with all this different stuff, but I don't have anyone that's, like, really keeping a schedule and doing different things like that. So that's kind of a common one that I run into. But it's like, so if I'm a creative person, I know, like, I don't really have, like, the base admin, the administrative side of it. It's, who can I find? Who can I plug into that? Who can really support me in that? And awareness is the biggest thing with that. Being aware of what, being self-aware, knowing realistically, your strengths, and that's your thing. That's like, your jam should be always focused on your strengths, but then being aware of your weaknesses so that people can come up in that. I don't tell people, like, forget about your weaknesses so that you just push them to the side, but use those weaknesses to surround yourself with good people.
Absolutely. And I think that goes exactly back to what you're saying earlier of, you don't want to only focus on your weaknesses, but it's important to definitely be mindful of them. Because everyone has their weaknesses, and that's okay. That's normal. And that's honestly one of the, if you're looking at it from a different way, if you have a weakness, that allows you to build another connection with somebody else that might have that strength. And so you can kind of start branching out from there and then form a team that way.
Yes.
So if you're aware of your weaknesses, you can start identifying the right people around you. That way you all can work together as a team.
Yeah, man. So I want to, I know we branched off there. I want to talk a little bit about, like, your coaching style.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about how you're coaching people. And so, like, what would you say are kind of some lessons that you're teaching people, you're coaching, or even that you've learned from coaching people?
Sure, absolutely. So I started coaching gymnastics when I was 14. I've coached anyone from 4 years old all the way through 18. So I've coached a very wide range, but there's a few things that holds true whether you're coaching a 4-year-old or an 18-year-old. And that's the first thing is, you always want to meet somebody where they're at. And that's something that I've taken out of gymnastics and applied to my everyday life as well, is you cannot approach somebody, you cannot approach a 4-year-old, talk to them like they're 15. They're not going to understand that. And they're going to be overwhelmed, and they're going to be uncomfortable, and they're going to be stressed. Yeah. At the same time, you can't be going to a 15-year-old talking to them like a 4-year-old, because then now all of a sudden they're going to feel like they're being talked down to. Yeah. So it's this constant battle of finding where people are and meeting them where they're at, and then just building from there.
Wow.
In addition to that, one thing that I didn't fully realize coaching until I started being an RA was, as a coach, you're in a mentorship position. You really get to kind of help lead and guide people, not only in building their skill set in gymnastics, but also just in sportsmanship. You want to teach them how to be courteous and respectful to yourself, to their teammates, and to anybody else they come in contact with, whether that's their, competitors or just, a visiting coach. And so what I realized was, in that position as being a mentor, helping one person might not change the entire world, but it will change the entire world for that one person, if that makes sense.
I like that.
And so through that, realizing that, hey, like I'm somebody that, these 4-year-olds might look up to, and just lead by example. Taking, if I hold them to a standard of I want them to be respectful and courteous in the gym, then I also have to hold myself to be respectful and courteous to my peers as well, and lead by example and do the same thing. And same thing with the older people that I've coached as well, is not only now that at this point they've probably already seen that before, they already know how to be respectful and courteous, but now they can continue being that mentor for the younger people as well. So just kind of making sure for the younger people coaching that you teach them how to be respectful, how to be courteous, and just how to be good sports. And with the older group that I coach, is hold them accountable to those standards, but also while they're being held to those standards, make sure they're also mentoring the younger people as well.
Yeah.
So the biggest lessons I can take away from coaching is meeting people where they're at, and then also just knowing that I'm in a position where I can make a big difference, and I should do everything I can to try to be a positive influence in that person's life.
Yes, that's good, dude. That's so good. And so with the kind of the mentor side of it, I like that idea where what you said that everyone you can make it, even if it's just one person that you're making a difference in. I love that idea, because so many people have this idea that in order to be successful or in order to make a difference, they have to have thousands of followers and they have to have, all right. This. And what you said when you said that if it's just one person that you make a difference in their life, then that can make all the difference. That to me is like, it really speaks to like my whole mindset of like, gotcha. you really, it just is one person. And then they're influencing one person, and and you never know what impact you're actually going to have on people.
Right. And that's just something I try to kind of live by every day is, hey, understanding that it's written on a board here. I heard it from a professor at NC State, ironically, but he said, hey, helping one person isn't going to change the entire world. It's almost impossible to influence the entire world at one time. But helping one person could change the world for that one person. It could change their perspective on things. And that's one thing that I know you interviewed Aiden Davis as well. That comes up as being an RA a lot. And I'm sure you, as the president of the village, came up with a lot as well, is sometimes when we meet people where they're not at a good place at that moment. But if you take the time to listen to their perspective and to understand them and just hear them out, sometimes that's all people need. And then at that point, you can start helping them build from where they're at, and then change the world for that one person. And then eventually they might be able to carry that on as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so like, people are so, because of social media, people are so numbers driven, but to me, the fact that even one person, like I think of it in terms of sharing my message, sharing the podcast, a very simple example. Right. If even one person cares enough to listen to the words that I have to say, that you and I want to say, that means so much to me, because it means that they care enough to take 20 minutes out of their week to be listening to this conversation. And that to me, it's so powerful. And it doesn't have to be 1 million people that hear your message. The fact that one person is listening, like, to me, it's mind blowing. And it's really humbling, because they genuinely believe, like, I want to listen, I want to check this out, I want to hear what you're saying. And I think that's huge. I think it's huge.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
So, but let's talk a little bit more about kind of your, like, the motivation. We talked about it a little bit more. What's like, when I work out with you, I've watched you work out, not as much actually working out with you, but like I'll be coming into the gym, and this man's like, yeah, guys, I just got finished with a Murphy, which, if you don't know what that is, he can like share, because it's like a mile and 100 pull-ups and 100 push. Anyway, and he'll be getting done with that. and it's just this like constant, really hardcore drive to work hard. What's
Mhm.
your advice to keep motivated, especially like right now, everyone's stuck at home, things are starting to open back up. And so, but
That's
like,
true.
what's your advice for like really like being motivated to stay in shape, keep your body healthy?
Absolutely. So, in terms of staying in shape, that's just something, I think gymnastics kind of ingrained in me. There's actually a book I'm currently reading called 25 Hours a Day. And
Okay.
one of the book's central themes is how do I do everything I want to do with so little time?
Mm.
Um, but with, in that book, what I've been reading about is the author speaks about how he personally just sets aside time every day to take care of his body, to take care of himself. And everybody kind of deals with stress and anxiety in different ways. And for me, I just found that through working out. So that's what motivates me is if I'm feeling a little stressed or a little worried or anxious about something, usually that's how I think best is I'll kind of remove myself from the situation and go work out.
Wow.
And so, and I
Yeah.
think I would highly encourage anybody listening to do the same. If you're feeling stressed or anxious about something, do something to remove yourself from that situation, just kind of distract your mind on something else and then come back to it a little bit later. You might have a different opinion or a different perspective on it. And
Yeah.
so I think, so personally, what with your question, that's what motivates me is
Yeah.
to work out, is to kind of clear my mind and come
Wow.
back with a different perspective. Because through doing that, if I'm not taking care of myself, then I cannot help take care of others. So I know
Absolutely.
one metaphor that RAs use all the time at state is this Wi-Fi symbol. So the dot of the Wi-Fi symbol is yourself.
Okay.
The first bar of that Wi-Fi symbol is how kind of you're taking care of yourself. So if I can't take care of myself, then my Wi-Fi isn't going to reach that second bar of helping others. And then, so by taking care of myself, I try to hold myself accountable to do that. That way, I'm prepared to help somebody else if I need to. That way, I'm not mentally or physically drained. So by
Absolutely.
kind of using that Wi-Fi symbol and trying to take care of myself and do what I need to do, that way, then I can go forward and help other people as well.
Dude, I like that. And I'm surprised I hadn't heard that
Mhm.
metaphor before. I like
Yeah,
that a lot.
it's a popular metaphor that RAs use. They teach it in the RA class, ironically, and that third bar of Wi-Fi is kind of the next step of once you're able to help others. It's okay. Now I can understand the context in which I'm leading,
Oh, wow.
and I can kind of analyze other people's perspectives and put myself in their shoes. So that's
Absolutely.
kind of the three steps. So just definitely to anybody who's feeling stressed or really busy, I encourage you to, whether for me it's working out, but do what makes you happy to fill your cup if it's empty. Remove yourself from the situation and do what's going to make you happy and what's going to be able to take care of yourself. That way, moving forward, then your cup is full, and now you can pour your cup into somebody else's cup and help them from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is something like genuinely for me, I'm just like curious to know about you, just like,
Yeah.
everyone else just gets to hear it. But like, because for me, like, I really was wondering, what is that drive? And people who know me know that like a lot of times I'll get motivated and I'll get
Hmm.
driven for a season. And, at some point it's going to start to fade out. And so
Right.
I've been trying to really find that driving point. And for me, it's a stress reliever too. But a lot
Hmm.
of times what happens is I'll get busy. And I think this happens to a lot of people. I get busy and like for some reason, like working out is that thing that it really like kind of falls off like pretty
Yeah.
quickly, because you see like a lot of times, and this, I'm guilty of this too, is I see it as like this like almost burden. I'm like, oh my gosh. But people, I read at one point, just like putting it in perspective, like I would rather go ahead and spend that 30 minutes to an hour a day of keeping my body healthy and be able to enjoy a long life than to be stressed and bogged down for the next 30 to 40 years and then
Right.
just have terrible health. And
Right.
that's like, I think that really puts it in perspective. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that
So,
makes sense.
yeah.
And I think, that's one way you and I fill our cups is, hey, we need just to release some energy. But that's not the same. That's not the same for everybody. Um, and so it's just, again, everybody needs to find that one thing or that few things that's going to fill their cup when they're feeling down.
Yes.
That way they can just keep going themselves. So,
Absolutely.
and I know, like you said, it's just finding that time for us to work out. And sometimes when we let that slip and fall, like you said, that's often when we feel like we're starting to trip.
Mm.
We're starting the trip. We haven't quite fallen yet, but we're also not steady on our feet. And that's when we need to take that time to take that step back. And hey, like, okay, maybe for you and I, like, hey, we need to go work out. We need to go do something to take care of ourselves. That way we can get steady on our feet again and then keep moving forward.
Yeah, man. Do you have any other I mean, you've worked as an RA. You're
Mhm.
going to work a resident advisor. For those of you, he's at NC State, and we were in the same building. And so, do you have any tips or anything that you see other people doing that is
Mhm.
working well as far as stress relief? I know it's different for everyone, but are there some common examples that you see people doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something that's very common at NC State is people, especially especially during exams, they'll focus so hard on academics that their brain is just fried. They're not able to keep going because they're just drilling themselves down in the textbook. And it's okay to kind of take that step back. And what oftentimes I've seen is, hey, like just having social interactions with people, just kind of removing yourself and just going for a walk or going downstairs and just playing foosball. Whatever it might
Yeah.
be, social interactions are huge in terms of filling people's cups. On the other side, I've actually seen the opposite when sometimes people who aren't as social just need time to themselves.
Mm.
And that's okay too. So, common things I see are working out is probably one of the best things, or the top things that I've seen, but also I've seen people just need time to be social. Working out might make them overstressed. So they
Yeah.
just take the time and just hang out with other people. The third thing I see very commonly is they just need to remove themselves from any interaction just for a little bit and kind of take time to think and reflect on kind of their day or their week and just kind of hit a reset button alone for a little bit. And then they can bounce back from there. So those are the three most common things that I see.
That's a really good perspective from the introvert's perspective. A lot of times I don't think about that, but thinking about just taking some time away
Mm-hmm.
from the situation, I think it's a really good perspective. And you bring that uniquely from the RA position of the you work with all different types of people, not just obviously, and I'm the same way, not just people like us, you know what I mean? And I
Right,
think that's
right.
huge. What do you find most rewarding about where you're at right now? I'm curious.
Oh, you hit me with that big question. I think the most rewarding um, part of my position as a resident advisor in my current
Yep.
role as a supervisor is usually when I'm called into situations, it's situations that aren't like something's not going right. Somebody might have had a really bad day, or somebody's struggling with something, whether that's a physical problem,
Yep.
something's not working right, or hey, like I am just drained and I've hit a wall and I can't continue.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I get phone calls. And so the most rewarding part to me is being able to go into those situations and figure out what exactly is going on, and just being able to put myself in somebody else's shoes and figure out how we can slowly start improving from there. And it's really, really rewarding when you see what you've done helps pull somebody out of a bad situation. And then you see that person do that again for somebody else.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I see in the residence halls all the time is one day somebody just might be down and you go into that situation and you say, hey, you know what, it's okay. And you listen and you comfort them and you meet them again where they're at. And you want to be an active listener, and B, just comforting and listen to them. Because a lot of times people feel as if they're not heard. So if you take the time to hear them and to put yourself in their shoes to understand their perspective, they'll start to be more comfortable speaking about it, and then we can start kind of a recovery from there. And then
Yes.
after that happens, whether that recovery is a day or it might be a few months, but no matter when that recovery is, when that person is able to do that for somebody else, that's one of the most rewarding things. And to see that chain continuing.
Absolutely. And I know, kind of that you are like a really great mentor for a lot of people. And I know like a lot of
Well, thank
times
you.
like RAs talk about filling their cup, and so we're talking about kind of all these ways that you kind of get ready to serve other people, how you're prepared for that. And my
Mm-hmm.
question is kind of, what do you look for in someone that you're going to consider your mentor? So you're constantly pouring out for all these different people.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in need of like someone to talk to, and when you're in that mindset or position, what are you looking for in that type of person?
Sure, absolutely. So, some of my best mentors have been coaches or some of my supervisors or bosses at NC State. One thing I always look for in a mentor is A, they have a different perspective than I have.
Okay.
if somebody has the same perspective as me, we might kind of hit a wall when we're
Okay.
trying to figure out solutions as to why maybe I'm feeling run down or why, I can't figure something out. So I think somebody with an entirely different perspective is helpful. B, I also really like my mentors to push me. I know
Yes.
sometimes if I'm feeling really run down, they might be like, look, like, you know what? You've been trying it this way so many times. Try it this different way and just, try it one more time. It goes back to that theme of try it one more time or go one more. Because they might have that different idea or perspective that I was looking for, and now it works that last time. And so in
Absolutely.
my mentors, I really look for somebody with different perspectives, but somebody that won't be afraid to push me to go a little bit further.
That's awesome. And I
Um,
think I think people so often are looking for people just to validate what they think.
mhm.
So the fact that you say that you're looking for someone with that different perspective is really refreshing, because like a lot of times I even think that I'm like, I'm going to make a call, they're going to say what I think, and then I'm going to hang up and I'm going to feel good
Yep.
about myself.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you need that real mentor who's
Hmm.
really there to say like, let's think critically about this.
Yep.
Oh my
Exactly.
gosh, dude, that's good. That's really good. That's a good perspective. And then pushing, yeah, surrounding yourself. It goes back to,
Hmm.
that first question we talked about, like surround yourself with people that are going to build you up and put you in a position for
Right.
success. Dude,
Absolutely. And kind of building off of that,
yeah,
it's
man.
when, I feel like I'm learning best when I'm actually uncomfortable, as weird as that sounds. Because if I'm uncomfortable, I'm in a situation I haven't been in before,
Yep.
and there's something going on that I haven't explored. And so one of the biggest things is I try to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I know that's kind of a buzz theme word that goes around RAs as well. But when a mentor pushes me to a point when, they might ask me to try something that I haven't tried before, that might make me a little queasy because I haven't done it before.
Yep.
Or they might be pushing me a little more than I've ever been pushed before. And for me, I have to take that step back and realize that's okay. And if it fails, again, that's a learning experience. If you fail, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to keep trying one more and try it a different way.
I love it,
So
dude. That's
that,
awesome.
that's the biggest thing I look for in mentors, is just being able to push me and make me slightly uncomfortable, because that's okay. And oftentimes that's what I need.
Yeah. Well, dude, hey, I really appreciate you being on today. It has been huge. Like, it's just such a good learning experience. I love when it's someone I know, like episode 1 with Aiden. I'm like, oh,
Oh
I
yeah,
know him. Like, he's a really good friend. But
yeah.
just doing this and really like just talking and
Hmm.
getting like a more flushed out perspective, I see this whole different side of you that I feel so good that I'm like such good friends with you. And I know that like I'm just excited to continue that and continue learning from you as you're having all these super cool experiences.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
so yeah, man. So I
And
just thought, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I was just wondering if I could share a quick story about Parker here,
Do
about his
it.
his kind of mentorship. So, all right. So back in freshman year, there was a time when Parker and I just wanted to go for a run. We hadn't gone on a run for each other before, and I'd been hearing about this guy all year about how you worked at Fleet. What was it called again?
Fleet Feet. Yeah,
Fleet
Fleet
Feet.
Feet in
That's right.
Raleigh. Shout
He
out.
sells running shoes. He runs all the time, and I like to run on occasion, but I'm not. I don't call myself a runner by any means. And so we go for a run, and I'm hyping myself up before this run because I know Parker's been running all year. And so right outside of our dorm, there's this big hill that it's huge incline. It's, I don't know, what, a quarter mile long or so.
Yeah.
And so Parker and I start just hauling up this hill. And Parker, I forgot Parker and his running skills. So I'm telling myself I have to push myself a little bit more. And also kind of not exactly knowing Parker very deeply freshman year, but like kind of
Yeah.
hearing about him. I was also trying just to hold myself to his standard too, because he's such a great guy, and I've been hearing all these great things. Like, dang, like I cannot let myself down in front of the Parker Mays. And so we're running up this hill, and I'm exhausted. I'm just dragging myself into a wall. And eventually we get to the top of the hill. We realize we're running like a 5:15 pace
Yeah.
uphill. And I look at Parker, I'm like, hey man, like I just gotta let you keep going. Like I gotta hang back a little bit. And it turns out we were both kind of like pushing each other back and forth a little bit. But it just
Now,
goes to show that Parker, you know, your leadership and your perspective on things carries on, and it also helps push other people as well. So I think that's one of the
appreciate
best
that.
things about these podcasts is you just offer such selflessness to take the time A, to do this, but also B, just to continue to listen to other people's stories and really help support them, but also just make them empower them. Really, it goes back to the relational leadership model. Is you are just great at empowering people to keep going and to push themselves a little bit more, just like that run. So, Parker Mays, thank you for empowering me, the Impact Leadership Village, but just so many people around NC State. You truly make a positive impact in all that you do.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. Hey, and I'm glad you shared that story. That was a terrible day. It was hot that day, dude.
It was hot. It was May.
Oh my
It was
gosh, it was May heat, a mile up. Like, it was a nightmare. But yes, always pushing that extra little bit. But yeah, hey, but I really do appreciate you sharing and just being so, raw, authentic, and sharing your story, because my whole goal with this is everyone has unique experiences, unique perspectives, and you obviously really understand that, and at the heart of that understanding. And so, like, to me, when I have guests on that really understand that goal, then that makes it so worthwhile to me. And so, dude, I'm so excited. Well, hey, for those of you watching and listening, definitely, if you're watching the video platform, all new this episode, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And then make sure, subscribe on your audio platforms if you're listening. And as always, you can check out additional content on Taking a Breath podcast on Instagram. So check that out. And we will look forward to seeing you again next week.